5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
How about we do it again?
6, 7, 4, 3, 2, 1. I think I farted.
Okay, let's try one more
I
time.
definitely.
Ready?
I can move you. Making review. Making review.
Say
6,
5.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome, Rank and Review listeners. Your lucky ears have found their way to episode 138. Me and my good friend Malcolm Wilkinson are going to discuss 6 satires. Some really high-quality comedies are going to be put under the rank this episode, so you have that to look forward to. I, as always, am your host and random Canadian Larry Parsons, and as always, I must warn you that this show contains coarse language and spoilers for the movies being reviewed and ranked. Please check out the website at ranknreview.ca, and please send me feedback at ranknreview@gmail.com. That's ranknreview@gmail.com. Thank you so much for listening to Rank and Review, and do me a favor. Tell your friends. Spread the word. Malcolm Wilkinson, welcome back to my messy basement.
Hello, Larry Parsons. Thank you for the coffee.
You're welcome. We're here today to talk about satire. Well, 6 comedies, basically. For the uninitiated out there, as far as I'm concerned, a satire is a comedy that's just basically putting something in the targets, taking a stab at something. It has an axe to grind as much as it has a story to tell. Right. So, although there's a romantic subtext to a lot of these movies, none of them really would you call romantic movies.
I wouldn't say any of the ones we're going to talk about are romantic.
There's no rom-coms in the bunch. It's not about, some guy trying to make it to graduation or some guy trying to, like I say, get the girl or get the promotion. Stop
the wedding and then he gets the girl at the end.
No, this is sort of taking a snapshot of either something that's popular in society or a specific sort of element of society that think, is worthy of lampooning. And it's that sort of jester thing where you can sort of talk truth to power because it's all under the guise of it's comedy, it's fun. What I like about my satire and my preference is that it has a little bit of teeth to it. Mm-hmm. So some of these have more teeth than others, but that's my approach. That's where I come into this. Why did you want to do satire, and was there a particular movie on the list that jumped out at you, or was this the genre you wanted to take?
Well, there were a couple. The Blazing Saddles and Dr. Strangelove. I'd seen those movies long time ago. So those were 2. When I saw the list, those were 2 that really jumped out at me.
Right.
I'd seen them a bunch of times, so seeing them again was not a problem to me. It was always a pleasure to see them again. So. Yeah.
I think that it's one of those things where the pendulum swings to the extreme left and to the extreme right, but kind of right now I feel like we're in a climate where really, really tough satire is not a safe thing anymore. No. You can't really make a movie like Team America, World Police, or The Life of Brian.
Team America was only 12 years ago?
Yeah. But still, I would be surprised to see a movie of that severity in the theaters right now. The public seems to be really, really easy to bruise right now. Mm-hmm. And I sort of lean against this. Not that I want to offend anybody, but I think that creatively you should always be allowed to take the gloves off. And it should be up to the audience whether or not you did it for the good cause. Was it a cheap laugh or was it a smart laugh? You know?
Right. I think this social media, I mean, I've kind of jokingly said, I think 2 or 3 people get upset, they go on Twitter, and then they just start an avalanche of people getting upset because of something that didn't actually affect them at all.
Or just false moral equivalencies or ridiculousness. This whole business with Disney firing James Gunn, for instance, which is already kind of old news. But, like, yeah, he had a bunch of tweets that were pretty blue and, like, clearly tongue-in-cheek, clearly meant to be funny, but I can totally see why people would be offended by it. Well, he can't work for the institution, the family institution that is Walt Disney. Mm-hmm. Seriously? That's one of the most evil and corrupt corporations. Like, from a business standpoint, they are despicable. They've made their entire fortune off of, you know, things that are out of copyright, and now have stymied copyright for decades because they want to retain ownership to Snow White and Cinderella.
Wasn't Walt Disney himself an anti-Semitic?
Yeah, very well. I mean, I don't know all the history about it, but that's a very common sort of thing that is mentioned. Mm-hmm. Anyway, I'm hoping that what's going to happen one of these days is that someone's going to put out a real ballsy, gutsy satire, and that's going to start the pendulum swinging back to the other extreme. Mm-hmm. Because, yeah, it's strange days for things like South Park or things, you know, subversive comedy. Mm-hmm. So I'm very happy to wade into this at this point.
Yeah, I'm kind of tired of hearing the word sorry for everything that gets said. Or sorry, as it may say in Canada. I don't know.
Yeah. I'm terribly sorry. Well, that's the thing. We live in polite Canada, you know, and I'm guilty of being overly nice and apologizing when I don't need to.
No, I just mean everywhere. I mean, it's just people seem to be having to apologize for something that might have been taken innocently 10 years ago.
It comes to the point where it actually stops communication, where you're scared what to say to somebody, or you know, things that you would have said, like, and everybody would obviously dismiss as something. Oh, you just said that to be shocking and get a laugh, right? Mm-hmm. Oh no, clearly you meant to hurt somebody with that. You were out for blood, and I would say 99 times out of 100, it's just something that came out of somebody's mouth that was more funny in their head than it was out loud, right? Mm-hmm. And we have to make allowances for that. Mm-hmm. And we also have to make allowances for people to, like I say, take shots at things that might be sensitive.
Right.
You're allowed to make fun of religion. You're allowed to make fun of, you know, politics. You're allowed to make fun of, you know, gender stereotypes. Yeah. Dare I say it, you're allowed to make fun of racial stereotypes. Mm-hmm. I think if you don't have that conversation, if you don't find the line between funny and offensive, then you're just not having the conversation, and that's not healthy.
No, I mean, Sarah Silverman would be out of a job if that was the case.
It's got to be strange times for Sarah Silverman, right? Mm-hmm. Like if you make your living as a shock comic, you know. And it puts me in a bad position too, because then I have to be like defensive of things that I hate. You know, I don't like redneck comedy. I'm not particularly a fan of the Andrew Dice Clay School of Comedy. No, but I totally think they should be allowed to do it.
Right? Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
You do you. I'm not going to buy a ticket for it. I might not understand it, but if you can make a living doing that, carry on.
There you go. I'll just change the channel.
Exactly.
Yeah. Sarah Silverman had a really funny joke. You might, if you want to edit this out, sorry. But no, she had a funny joke where she said, yeah, you know, I can understand when the doctor was born that, you know, he slapped me on the ass, but did he have to call me a fucking whore after?
Yeah, exactly. See, how dare she?
Yeah, how dare she?
How dare she? All right, well, that's pretty good as far as an introduction for me. Is there anything else you wanted to say?
No, I think I'm pretty good right now. Yeah.
We're going to talk about 6 satires, and we're going to go backwards in time as we progress. We're going to start with Borat, Cultural Learnings of America for Make Benefit Glorious Nation of Kazakhstan.
And he memorized that too, folks.
Yes. We are going to talk about Anchorman, The Legend of Ron Burgundy, starring the highly polarizing figure of Will Ferrell. We're going to talk about Mike Judge's Office Space. We're going to talk about Airplane, a classic 80s satire of 70s disaster movies. And we're going to talk about Mel Brooks' Blazing Saddles, and then from obscure filmmaker Stanley Kubrick, Dr. Strangelove, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying About and Love the Bomb.
Right. I think that was Lee Beckman's favorite director, Kubrick.
Today, I think he would say either Scorsese or Carpenter, but ask him 2 days from now and it'll be something else.
Jak się masz? My name is Borat. I'm journalist for Kazakhstan. My government sent me to USA to make a movie film. Please, you look. Hello, nice to meet you. I'm new in town. What to say? Hello, my name is Borat. I'm new in town.
Careful, hey, bye. Welcome to our country, okay?
My name is Borat.
Okay, good. Well, I'm not used to that, but that's fine.
If this car drive into a group of gypsy, will there be any damage to the car?
It depends on how hard you hit them and all that. It's hard to say.
Ladies and gentlemen, Borat, Satire.
Can I say we support your war of terror? Kazakhstan is a great...
It's hard to underplay the impact of your first experience of a movie. There was a ridiculous...
I'm glad you say it instead of a movie.
Yeah. There was a ridiculous amount of buzz around Borat, and at the time, especially that this came out, my wife and I didn't get to go out to movies too much because we had these rugrats running around. They were not as good at looking after themselves as they are today. So we didn't go out to theaters very often, and for whatever reason, we decided to take in Borat. There was just all this talk about Sacha Baron Cohen as a really crazy comedy, and we went in there fairly early, and it was a packed house, and the audience just roared. Like, everybody was just hurting and like almost traumatized by the level of like sheer, oh my god, audacity of the movie. And we came out of that theater just like our sides were hurting, and it was like crazy. And we were like, wow, I guess Borat actually lived up to the hype. That's amazing. And then I fast forward to about a year later where I watched it on video. I think it was at my mom's place, and we watched it in stony silence.
Was that like your silence too, or just was that because of the comfort level of everyone around, or you just
I don't know. I think the uncomfortableness of the movie in the theater caused laughter, and I was so busy laughing that I didn't ask any questions of where the laughter was coming from. I'm kind of actually, because of those two very drastically different experiences of the movie, split right down the middle on Borat. Because I honestly think that some of it is absolutely hilarious. But I also think that some of it, and as much as I opened up this episode saying, oh, sensitive feelings, some of it comes close to crossing the line, not because of the severity of the comedy, but of the fact that the people that he's interacting with aren't in on the joke.
Right. Yeah, well, that actually makes it funny. I mean, he had that character just recently has that TV show, Who Is America? Yeah. Did you see that when he was in?
I've seen clips of it. I haven't seen the whole show.
Well, there was an interview he did with a senator from Georgia or something like that, or a congressman or whatever. Yeah. And he got him to do the most ridiculous things on camera, filmed it. This guy just didn't know that it was Sacha Baron Cohen. Just exploited him for the racist fool that he is. Yep. And then he ended up resigning like about 10 days later. He was forced to resign.
Because he was just completely shamed by it. And again, like he's using comedy as a weapon here. And if you're going after people in public positions and people of power, and people who don't know who you are, in a way, like I'm split that way. I think that was kind of like almost a novel sort of thing to do. Mm-hmm. It's almost like aggressive pop art journalism in a way, but if it had real world effects. But I take less issue with that. More issue with just people, he's almost taking advantage of their willingness to put up with him because they think that he's just this nice man who's out of his element. He's a fish out of water. Mm-hmm. He's doing this because he's ignorant of our ways. And they're very patient and tolerant of all of these terrible things that he does out of kindness. And yet he's exploiting it to make them look ridiculous. Right? I'm less comfortable with. Right?
I didn't mind that factor. I mean, I'm just thinking when they were sitting around that house with all the people that were very, religious and that, and the dinner table, and they were being very patient with him, and then towards the end, it was like, okay, you have to go.
You have to go. But my conceit is that he was going to push it until they kicked him out.
Oh yeah, of course.
Like
yeah.
that was the whole gist of it.
Mm-hmm.
And like I think a similar complaint is made about the Bill Maher documentary, sort of religious.
Yeah.
Because the targets that he put, a lot of them were kind of soft targets. It was kind of almost too easy.
Mm-hmm.
You go to a trailer park church that does a sermon literally out of the back of a big truck, you know, and ask these, you know, tough erudite philosophical questions to people who have never begun to, you know, begin to question it at all. Yeah, they're going to look dumb, right? That doesn't mean that they're dumb. It just means that you're opening a door that they have no access to, they'd had no access to their entire life.
Oh, of
right?
course.
So then it becomes an exploitation of their ignorance, and worse than that, we were laughing at them. I'm more comfortable laughing with generally than at, but I understand satire is, you know, it has some points to make. I love like the sequence at the rodeo when he does that speech and tells them that he hopes that they find all of the terrorists and kill every one of them and their children and their wives, and like it just gets really fucking crazy. And like the audience is clapping because at first rah America, but the darker it gets, it's just like, okay.
Yeah, they don't know what to do.
They don't know what to do because fundamentally they don't necessarily disagree with what he's saying, but to hear it laid out like that, it's appalling.
Right. Yeah.
I have so much respect for Sacha Baron Cohen as a performer too. His ability to transform himself physically. He's an incredibly famous person, and he can still do these hit pieces like you're talking about. Michael Moore can't do that anymore, right? He can't go storm up to some CEO with a microphone in his face and say, "Oh, who's this guy?" Right?
Yeah, right.
No, but Sacha Baron Cohen is such a chameleon that he can completely change his physical presence and his look so entirely that it, you know, as a fan of his, it takes me a while to just, holy shit, that's Sacha Baron Cohen.
Well, the thing that I was talking about with that congressman from the summertime was, I mean, I think he was playing a former Taliban agent. Well, he kept denying that he was Taliban. He kept like misspeaking. I used to be in whatever it was. I used to be in the Taliban. I mean, I wasn't in the Taliban, but or whatever it was. But yeah, he can disguise himself very well. And he did the Ali G show and that. Yeah.
It's funny, and again, it could be a mood-specific thing. Like the very first thing we see when we see Kazakhstan, right? And he's got right out of the gate, "My name is Borat," and his weird competition with his neighbor, and the way he French kisses his sister to say hello.
Well, there's the rom-com right there,
right? But there's still weird things like the fact that in his bedroom there's a cow that's just standing in the room, right? And like, that's a stereotype, but is he making fun of our idea of what, you know, Central European villages are like, you know, these places trapped in time? Or is he making fun of them? I honestly don't know. I laughed, but I don't know where his heart is.
I laugh at South Park when they make fun of Canadians.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not going to take it personally. And again, I don't like being offended on behalf of other people. But what I think is really fascinating on Borat is on a given day, I will just laugh at that and not question it. And another day I'll laugh, but kind of question, like, is that a nice thing to be laughing at?
I think it's fine. I think you can laugh at that anytime.
Well, and definitely if you go in wanting to be offended, you're going to be offended. And in a way, for me, like, I like to think I got a pretty thick skin. So if you puncture it, I kind of like, wow, high five, well played, sir. Right? I would never tell anybody not to watch Borat. In fact, I think it's one of those things that you probably should watch. But I also understand that it could really go either way. It's like for the horror movies out there, it's like the Blair Witch Project or the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. People either fucking hate them or think that they're one of the best horror movies ever made, and I kind of feel like that's going to be the divide for most people on Borat.
Right. What did you think of the because obviously they're doing a running on the bull spoof, the running of the Jew? Yeah.
Again, it's so over the top ridiculous that I can't really be offended by it. It's so cartoonish. I also want to talk about sort of the boldness of the almost jackass level stunt work that happens here. There's a fairly hard to forget scene where he and his producer, manager guy get into a fight and a chase stark naked through this hotel.
Yeah.
And like first of all, the fairly graphic physical contact between the two men. Yeah,
that's pretty gross.
Is like, I don't like to think that I get uncomfortable, but it did kind of make me uncomfortable. Yeah. But at the same time, impressed with both of those actors' willingness to go completely for it.
Oh yeah, no, they went
and
far.
Again, not trying to make themselves look. They don't look like handsome, svelte, guys that work out. These are like very, very, very normal looking people running around stark naked. Mm-hmm. And again, it's just pure holy shit, they went there. Mm-hmm. And it absolutely gets a laugh. It absolutely gets a shock. But at the same time, it's not exactly sharp or deep.
No, it's not.
It's just like.
Well, these are two guys who were mad at each other wrestling because he was defacing himself to the Pam Anderson magazine or something. Yeah.
Borat becomes obsessed with Pam Anderson,
yes.
And he believes that his wife has been killed. So he completely shifts the focus of the trip. Instead of going to New York, they have to go to Los Angeles so that he may claim. Mm-hmm. Pam Anderson, who must have been a really good sport. Apparently she was in on the joke, so a lot of the people that were there around her weren't, but they did let her know that Sacha Baron Cohen was going to be getting kind of physical.
Yeah.
So, and again, way to be a good sport. And that's really funny. I guess, I'm not sure where I land on the blurred line candid camera perspective. I get that you can get great results out of it, and I get the truth to power thing, but I think it's a gray area. Mm-hmm. In the end, I laughed, but I felt guilty.
I didn't feel as guilty. I mean, I laughed in some parts. I mean, some parts I just didn't. Like I said, the running the Jew I didn't really find. Maybe
just ridiculous.
Yeah, right? Maybe that was the uncomfortable part. I don't know.
I love his like hilarious, over the top, irrational terror of the Jewish people when they realize that the bed and breakfast they had are run by Jews. Like, the sheer naked terror on his face is itself hilarious. Mm-hmm. And again, then we're sort of laughing at Borat's ignorance, but Borat's not real.
No, he's
not. He followed this up with, I'm trying to remember the name of it. It's another sort of faux documentary thing where he's playing like a flamboyant homosexual, Bruno,
yeah.
And it's sort of the same sort of uncomfortable level thing, but in a way it's more focused in that it's particularly really, really attacking people's feelings about heteronormalcy.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
And it's really sort of mushing your nose in it. And in the way that movie is kind of one note and repetitive, which would be a complaint about that, this one is kind of unfocused, and it's just sort of moment to moment. I don't feel like, well, it was a movie that was being discovered as it was made. They got good material, they found a way to put it in the movie, and then they moved on to the next scene. It almost plays as sketch comedy more than as a movie.
Right.
So, yeah, I guess maybe Bruno is much more narratively successful and satirically successful, but I think Borat's just a funnier movie through and through. Yeah. As much as I say, like, depending on the day.
They might have expected more from Bruno because it was a follow-up.
Right.
Whereas Borat, that kind of came out, and this guy kind of came out of nowhere, I guess.
Yeah. Well, the Ali G show was fairly popular in the underground, but you wouldn't recognize this guy as Ali G, right? Like I said, so... Mad props for the movie. Again, the problems that I have with it are largely mine. And in a way, that's what a good satirical movie should do. It should make me a little bit uncomfortable. I kind of feel like me being in no man's land in the middle makes me the exception. Most people I know either think Borat's hilarious or they think it's just awful. I think you should watch it and make up your own mind, which means this review's probably not been that helpful.
Maybe. I mean, I'm kind of more. I mean, I'm not one way or the other extreme. I didn't love it. I didn't hate it, but I probably lean more toward liking it.
Right.
But some parts were uncomfortable. I'm not really against the candid camera thing.
Right.
I mean, especially when it comes to politicians or religious leaders, people in power that are trying to...
If you're a public figure, you're a public figure. You know, your turn comes around, and and part of you should maybe know that that's something that'll happen, right? Mm-hmm. But if you're just an average person, I don't know. I'm mixed on it. Yeah. But I did laugh.
Yeah.
Good enough?
Yep. Good enough.
There was a time when people believed everything they heard on TV. This was an age when only men were allowed to read the news. And one anchorman was more man than the rest.
Good evening. I'm Ron Burgundy.
Damn it! Who typed a question mark on the teleprompter? Hey, Garth, how's the divorce?
Oh, not so good. I'll probably never see my kids.
Fantastic. I'm not lonely. I'm beloved by everyone in San Diego.
You're so wise. You're like a miniature Buddha, covered in hair. What are your hopes? What are your dreams? What are your passions?
To be the first female anchor.
And I'd like to be King of Australia. Seriously, you sound like an insane person.
I just got a call from Network, and the decision has been passed down to make Veronica our co-anchor. No! 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 Don't get me wrong. I love the ladies, but they don't belong in the newsroom. It is Anchor Man, not Anchor Lady. I don't know what we're yelling about.
What if just for tonight, we weren't co-workers, we were co-people?
Oh, I'm storming your castle on my steed, milady.
We should keep it relatively quiet around the station.
Absolutely. I'd also like to share with you that we are currently dating, and that she is quite a handful in the bedroom. Uh-oh.
Knights of Columbus, that hurts.
So, Anchorman, The Legend of Ron Burgundy, I think hangs very strongly on your opinion of Will Ferrell. I understand that people tend to react fairly strongly to him. He's hard cheese. He's, like, some people think he's absolutely hilarious. Some people just do not vibe on him at all.
Right.
I think that Will Ferrell's real gift, I can't really compare him to John Cleese. I think John Cleese is just on another level, but he has something in common with John Cleese in that he's really good at keeping dignity on his face while he's doing something that is completely preposterous.
Well, that's a good way of putting it, yeah.
You know, he plays so straight things that are so absolutely crazy that it gets me. It'll sometimes get in. I don't love every Will Ferrell movie. I can't defend all of Will Ferrell's work, but I warmed to Anchorman. This one, it's funny, I'm talking about with Borat, how the first time I loved it, the second time I didn't know how to take it. The first time I watched Anchorman, I was kind of disappointed, actually. I mean, I got that there was stuff that was funny in it, but I wasn't rolling in the aisles. But it's one of those weird movies that it kind of stuck in my brain. Every now and then little things would sort of catch in my brain. And then when I watched it again, I actually found it kind of funnier. And when I watched it again for this podcast, I kind of found it funnier again. It has this weird cumulative effect.
Right, and if it pops up on TV and you're halfway through the film, it's halfway through, I mean, you kind of tend to stay on the channel, I find.
Yeah.
Yeah. It
concerns itself with a 1970s local news team.
From San Diego.
And they're super macho dudes. And
it's a boys' school.
They love the place. And Network has decided, times are a change and we got to bring a girl on board. Not a woman, a girl. Mm-hmm. Enter Christina Applegate. And they would all love to, see her fail or some way undercut her success. Mm-hmm. But more than that, they would all love to sleep with her.
Right. They'll make an attempt.
What the movies, I think, is a comment on is just how much times have changed in a relatively short period of time. This movie is close enough set to our lifetime, and yet it feels almost science fiction in the portrayal of the social norms of the world, right?
Well, I think actually there's still probably a long way to go for women.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because I'm sure this stuff's still happening.
But it's not celebrated.
It's not,
in the environment they're showing here, no one questions their behavior at any time.
Well, no, when oh my God, the guy, who's their boss?
Fred Willard.
I mean, he said, we're bringing in someone, and the four of them are in there with Fred Willard, and they're making, jokes about women and all this, and they're all laughing, including Fred Willard, who just told them that, we're going to bring in this lady, and then she walks by, and then it's like, yeah.
Ron Burgundy falls completely in love with her, and inexplicably, and I don't know that the movie really successfully tells us how, other than, I guess, chicks like guys who can play a musical instrument. For some reason, she falls for him. Yeah. He is physically and emotionally repellent in almost every
What was that? The flute? What was the
pan flute or the
something
jazz flute?
Jazz flute. Yeah.
Cameos, although, by the way, throughout this movie. Fred Armisen is the weird, non-specific cultural waiter that he keeps going to.
Yeah.
Jack Black memorably kicks his dog off of a bridge.
Yeah.
Seth Rogen plays like a almost not there part as the cameraman, just in the background of a couple of scenes, really. Like, you can sort of see in the background of the movie, like, people who are going to blow up. This is 2004, and in the next 5 or 10 years, a lot of the people that were bit players in this movie were front and center.
Right.
So it's interesting to watch on that level. But mainly I like it because it is funny and it is on point with its satire. But I would just make it a caution. If you're not a fan of Will Ferrell, this is not going to win you over.
No, it's not. No. The Academy was not calling him anytime soon.
Here's something that I would say that I'm not necessarily interested in. I mean, if he does it, great. But this transition that a lot of, comedic actors, like Steve Carell, for instance, or the Jim Carreys or the Robin Williams, where they make a big career out of themselves as a comedic actor and then transition into serious work. For some reason, I think that I like Will Ferrell kind of where he is. I don't love all of the movies that he makes, but I like him as a gratuitous, over-the-top sort of caricature. And like I say, it's amazing that he can play both the clown and the straight man simultaneously. That's a weird act to pull off, and I think he does it.
Abbott and Costello combined. Actually, speaking of one of Will Ferrell's co-stars that he frequents with now is John C. Reilly. He's done it in reverse. He was actually a serious actor. Now he's just seems to be making a career out of clowning around, which is kind of a shame.
But he's good at it. Like, he's not half-assing it. Like, no. I've never felt in any movie, even the bad movies he's been in, that John C. Reilly has half-assed anything.
No.
And he's one of the few, regulars that we don't see in the cast here.
Yeah.
I do love the news team. David Koechner, Paul Rudd, Steve Carell are really good comedic works around them. Steve Carell playing a tricky role because you could argue that they're making fun of people who are mentally ill, but in a weird way, there's something really lovable about Brick and likable about Brick. There's nothing mean about Brick, even when he's like doing the bad things to get Corningstone. He's just doing it because the other guys told him to. He has no real understanding of the stakes or what's going on.
Pants party.
Pants party. Yeah, exactly. I think it's one of those things that if played badly, it could really go south. There's that weird Palooka role in Death to Smoochie, where the guy's playing a boxer who's basically been beaten stupid. Again, that shouldn't be funny, but the right actor playing it the right way can make that work as in a way that we're not laughing at him, but with him,
With him,
yeah. Yeah, that's the subtle difference. It's tricky, but you got to get there. David Koechner is this roaring sexist alcoholic who is clearly in love with Ron Burgundy, like in a very more than friends kind of way, but in no way able to acknowledge it on a surface level. It's all just way deep. And Paul
almost
Rudd,
in a non-sexual way.
Yeah. And Paul Rudd as the would-be ladies' man of the group, but we never see him have any real success with the ladies at all. No. He fancies himself to be again. So it's sort of making fun of all these different aspects of sort of male ego and what they put out to the world maybe not necessarily being what they really are. There's nothing particularly authentic about any of the guys. They're kind of goofy and lovable, but they're not real. They're all playing parts. The only real character that we're really given in the movie is the character that Christina Applegate plays, Veronica Corningstone.
Corningstone, yes.
She's just motivated to be the best reporter she can be in this terrible man's world.
And didn't they give her something like here you're going to a cat fashion show?
Yeah, cat fashion show and stuff like this, like completely not even C stories, like D material. Just isolated moments of the movie that I love, like the fact that the Will Ferrell character is so stupid that he will read whatever they put on the monitor. If someone accidentally puts a question mark at the end of the sentence, he'll say, "I am Ron Burgundy."
Ron Burgundy?
Like, just that as a comedic conceit, I think, is genius.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah, like, the movie largely works. My friend Scott Lehman, friend of the show, actually quoted this movie while giving a speech at his sister's wedding.
Oh, really?
So, like, it's something that definitely sticks in people's minds. I know a lot of people were way too excited about Anchorman 2. I always know to sort of suspend my expectations when it comes to sequels. And I don't hate Ron Burgundy 2, but I think this is the Ron Burgundy movie to watch.
Right. Well, I mean, it was also quite a few years later, too.
Yeah, it was late to the party.
Mm-hmm.
So, did you find the relationship credible? Or should we even bother asking that question?
With Ron Burgundy and Corningstone? I found it. I mean, once he felt threatened, I think. He tried to do everything to try and sabotage her, and that's why he would try and get everybody to try and pants party with her. Yeah. Because he wanted her out, and then she eventually got it in the end, or got him in the end by writing
making
something
him
on the
say,
teleprompter.
"Fuck you, San Diego,"
which totally people relied on the news back then. Ron Burgundy. Their local news, and Ron Burgundy was a hero to San Diego, and then you see all these people like upset and in tears, and
I loved you, Ron Burgundy.
I loved you, Ron Burgundy.
I loved you. Yeah. Again, hilarious. And I also love, like, when Ron hits bottom, it's not like this anguished scene where we like want to look away. It's absolutely hilarious.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There's a scene where he's in a phone booth.
Oh, yeah, I was just thinking that.
Just weeping. And it's hilarious.
It is
hilarious. And he's such an asshole and such a buffoon that we kind of revel in his, suffering, while at the same time wanting him to get his job back.
Right. And also it's a hot summer day in San Diego and he's drinking the milk. Oh, milk was a bad choice!
Just, again, isolated lines, like after the infamous anchor team super fight between all of the celebrity news teams, and then they just cut to, wow, that escalated quickly.
Yeah.
Right? Like the most understated thing you could possibly...
Rick killed a guy.
Yep. Yes, he did. Where did you get a grenade, Brick? I don't know. It doesn't matter.
Yep.
And that's what I think. Like, I could put my storytelling hat on and say there's just no reason for her to fall in love with him. It's a complete contrivance of the plot. But I don't give a shit.
No.
I really don't give a shit. No, he's done nothing but be terrible to her. No, he's not attractive, and no, he's not pleasant to be around.
No.
But she falls for him anyway, as a con of the story. And she does feel like, to some level, she's sunk to their level. In order to finally win and get her anchor seat, she really genuinely fucked them all over in a way that, so her victory is bitter to her own taste in that way.
But she did get what she wanted.
She did get what she wanted. But she's a better journalist than any of them, too. She takes her job seriously, right? So
they're less journalist and more celebrity.
Yeah. As far as making a lot of sense, no, it doesn't make a lot of sense. But it's consistently funny. It's consistently lively. I like it a lot.
I like it too, yeah.
So I think that if you haven't seen it, you know what we're talking about here. Mm-hmm. And if that sounds like something you would like, by all means. But like I said before, if you're not a Will Ferrell fan, this is not going to change your mind.
Did you think? No, I mean it could go either way. Did you think in Anchorman 2 when they had the fight scene there,
right?
And it was set in the early '80s or mid '80s, wherever it was set, and they had the fight scene. There were more cameos or whatever. Do you think there was more people wanting to get in on the to be seen, or was it just because, like he said, wow, the news has really become saturated nowadays?
I guess you could argue that they were making a statement on it, but to me it's sort of the sequel-itis thing where it worked in the first movie, let's do it again, and we'll just do it bigger, and that will make it better in some way, right? Mm-hmm. I say do something new with the sequel, take the characters that we're familiar with and make the unfamiliar story. But again, I don't hate that movie either. It's fine. It just, by nature of it being a sequel, it tastes less fresh than this does to me. So.
Who are part of a team.
And remember, next Friday is Hawaiian Shirt Day.
Okay, but I could set the building on fire.
Who respect their boss.
We need to talk about your flair.
Well, I have 15
15 pieces on.
15 is the minimum. Brian, for example, has 37 pieces of flair on today. And a terrific smile.
And need to escape.
I don't like my job, and I don't think I'm gonna go anymore.
One of these days, I just kick this piece of...
I'm thinking now it might be more fun to just get fired. And I've always wondered what that would take.
Oh, Peter, listen.
Well, it looks like you've been missing quite a bit of work lately.
Well, I wouldn't say I've been missing it, Bob.
That's just a straight shooter with upper management written all over him.
We're gonna be getting rid of these people here. Mr. Samir, not gonna work here anymore anyway.
You haven't been showing up and you get to keep your job.
Actually, I'm being promoted.
Thank you, Bob.
This is a suck.
They're gonna throw you out on the street so that Bill Lumberg's stock will go up. Ooh, it's completely unfair. Initech deserves to go down. We're just the guys to do it. Tell me about that virus you're always talking about. The one that could rip off the company for a bunch of money.
I'm not going to do anything illegal, Peter.
Illegal? Samir, this is America.
So Mike Judge is weirdly, I mean, it's hard to call the man cursed. He's been an incredibly successful writer, comedian his entire life. But as far as his feature motion pictures, he's been weirdly cursed that when they initially come out, they seem to make no splash at all. The critics are like, meh, and the audience tend not to show up. That was certainly the case for Office Space and also for Idiocracy. Mm-hmm. And his recent film Extract came and went without any notice. So I assume in the next couple of years people are going to rediscover it as a comedic genius movie, right?
And Office Space probably found a life of its own.
Yeah. Office Space has probably grown more than any of his other films as far as its reputation. I think what sunk it in the theater, honestly, is its R rating.
Mm-hmm. Possibly, yeah.
It's got an R rating because it's got a little bit of language and one very brief, fairly innocent shot of nudity in the film. But people knew the sensibility of Mike Judge, or else they thought they did. They were like, well, he does King of the Hill, and he did Beavis and Butthead. So it might be edgy, but it's not going to be super edgy. And
no.
But I think what I like and surprises me about Office Space is that by Mike Judge standards, it actually does have quite an edge to it. It is not saying very nice things about the day-to-day life of, the office cubicle,
No.
and the corporate enterprise that circles around it and what it does to people. In fact, in a lot of ways, it's almost sinister and negative. But the presentation is so light and so gentle and so warm that it's almost missable upon first viewing. I love how much teeth that Office Space has underneath all the smiles.
They make the characters that work in the office are lovable.
Yeah.
The character of oh my gosh, now I'm forgetting his name. The boss.
Okay, that's Gary Cole playing Bill Lumberg.
Yeah, Lumberg. Yeah, I mean he's just a jerk.
Yeah.
And he just sort of, he's very dismissive towards them and just. I mean, every time, yeah. I mean, it's in one ear, not the other. He's not paying attention to anything they say.
He doesn't care about you,
no.
And he doesn't care enough to pretend that he cares about you, and he's not self-aware enough to recognize that that is transparent.
Mm-hmm.
And none of that's said in the movie. It's all done through the character and the performance.
Right.
And in a weird way, Lumberg, I mean, he's a villain to the piece, but in his heart is not full of hate or he's not an evil person. In his head,
no.
He's just become this thing. There's almost no humanity left to him. This is what this world has shaped him into.
Mm-hmm.
That's the interesting thing about it. Like, honestly, the main character, Ron Livingston, who just hates his life so much that after a triggering event at a hypnotherapist's office, suddenly has either a mental break or an epiphany, or was magically cured by the hypnosis. He just is given the ability to not give a shit anymore.
No,
he doesn't care about the repercussions of his job. He doesn't care about the repercussions of his day-to-day life. And he's doing it all with a smile on his face, and he's sleeping through work, and he's ignoring his responsibilities.
And he's moving up the ladder.
And he's succeeding because of it. That's sort of a weird, sort of fantastical subversion of the plot. But what I found interesting is all of these things, if you remove the smile on his face, are symptoms of depression.
Of depression?
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you are living this life as described, where you hate your existence 8 hours a day, And the other 8 hours of the day that you're not spending sleeping, you're sort of spending dreading going back to the work. Then, you know, some of the real trigger signs that your depression is escalating is you're sleeping too much, you're denying responsibility, you're stopping showing up without giving excuse. It's not even calling in sick when you're not really sick. It's just getting to the point where you don't give a fuck enough to go to work anymore. Right? But the movie's sort of playing it as, to him, it's a good thing. Slowly through the course of the movie, we find out it's a bad thing. He does need to take personal responsibility. And if he does break the law and he does fight back against the corporate evildoers, chances are he's going to lose, right? And all of that is called legitimately in the movie. And it never loses its step for a second, being charming, funny, and warm. Like I said, it's talking about utter darkness. And it's doing it so pleasantly. Well, it's almost a magic trick. I don't know how he did it, but it's great.
3/4 of the workforce probably live like that.
I know it. Yeah. I absolutely know it. Like, slice of life. I did 3 summers of student work in a government facility, working for SGI in various different places. Certainly not going to name any names, and I'm not trying to talk shit about these people. I mean, I made some good money while I worked there. But they had a little office celebration in the corner of the room, everybody huddled together to celebrate the 30th anniversary of this employee who had been there. And we had cake and we had coffee, and there was a polite round of applause, and it was about the most fucking depressing thing I had ever witnessed in my life. I'd worked with that guy on, like, I helped him doing his filing, I was just a student there, and he fucking hated it there. He hated it there. And 3 decades and some cake and some coffee and this sort of polite, unenthusiastic round of applause, you know. If I ever thought that I could make my life in a cubicle, I kind of knew at that moment, well, no, I'll wait tables, I'll pump gas proudly into my 50s before I subject myself to 30 years of something that I fucking hate.
Do you want to hear, I don't think they'll hear this in New York, but do you want to hear something really shitty about sort of office? Where I worked at a hotel. And we were having a Christmas party, and I don't want to say the girl's name, but there were 3 girls. One girl was the main girl who was in charge of setting up the Christmas party. Now it always slows down after Christmas and that, the hotel industry and that. So the Christmas party was on a Friday. I think it was like the 21st or something like that, a few days before Christmas. And she's getting together, setting up the Christmas party, everything, getting all the decorations up in the banquet hall or whatever. And then she finds out at about, 1 o'clock that she's one of the people that's going to be laid off.
Wow.
Oh, the 21st, the day of the Christmas party. And she asks, I guess, from what I heard, well, can I still come to the Christmas party then? Well, no, you don't work here anymore.
That would not be appropriate.
And she set up everything, and she had done it for a couple of years, and
wow,
she got let go.
The thing is that everybody who's worked a shitty job at a shitty place like that has a story like that. And almost everybody who wasn't born wealthy has had a job like that at some point in their life. And that is why Office Space is going to last. I mean, I think that everybody can relate to having a job they don't like, and everybody can relate to the casual, indifferent corruption of the, you know, the ruling class, for lack of a better word, or for the powers that be in your given institution. They have the power to take away your means of living for real reasons or pretend ones. And the rules that they make seem and sometimes are completely arbitrary, but you are helpless but to follow them. And it's a cruel position to put you in. As the Ron Livingston character says quite aptly in this movie, this is not what human beings were meant to do. We weren't meant to sit in a box and look at screens all day. That's not what we're supposed to be doing. And it's obviously not what he's supposed to be doing.
This is like sort of with this Me Too movement nowadays. I mean, you hear a lot of these Hollywood actresses that are coming up in that, but they have means in that. A lot of the people that can't say anything, can't do anything, it's because they have them
because if they make any noise, they can't pay rent, and if they can't pay rent, they have to move home.
And
if they have to move home, they want to put a gun in their mouth.
Yeah, because I mean, the chambermaid at a hotel, I mean, she can't say anything, she'll get fired, and then who's going to believe her?
So dour, and we need to be able to laugh at this, and Office Space gives us that opportunity. Counterintuitive choices that work completely well for the movie. The gangster rap soundtrack. You wouldn't think that it would be appropriate stylistically, because this is a fairly white movie. I think we can say fair. It's sort of talking about that weird corporate world possessed by the okie dokie white folk, right?
But it works for the Xerox.
It absolutely works. Much like they needed the R rating, because if he was saying, "Oh gosh darn it to heck, this stupid photocopier," we would immediately call bullshit.
Right.
But him going from 0 to absolutely furious with the photocopier is something we can all relate to. It might not be a photocopier, it might be a cash register or some tool or some instrument that's just not doing what it's supposed to do. I do find it's the little shit that really triggers you, right? A major catastrophe happens and an eerie calm will fall over you because you have to deal with it. But you stub your toe on the edge of the desk and just fuck, right? Right away you get really angry.
Yeah.
So he wants to fight back, and through his friend played by David Herman, who has the amusing name of Michael Bolton in the movie.
Bolton, yeah.
He realizes that they can put a bug into
Just
the
call me
software.
Mike.
Yeah, please don't call me Michael Bolton. He realizes he can put a bug in the software, and by taking fractions of pennies at a time, cumulatively over a period of years, basically steal hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Without anybody noting.
And
Which is the plan.
That's the plan, and they don't imagine any real fingerprints being left behind. And the shittier and shittier as the days go by that they're being treated, the more this plan doesn't just seem right, it seems justified. And while they're doing it, you're on their side. But again, you look at it objectively. What are they doing, right? They've become the corruption that they've so hated. They're gonna steal, you know. Even initially, when he finds out his buddies are being fired, when he's got this eerie calm, he says hello to the Bobs who have come to make layoffs, and he tells them, "I hope your layoffs go great for you." Right? His empathy doesn't extend beyond himself at that point.
Right.
So it's only when his personal buddies are on the chopping block that all of a sudden he realizes this is wrong.
This is wrong. Yeah.
It's a slow self-awareness that, as much as we cheer for it, and the secret weapon of the movie might be Ron Livingston, because if played wrong, this character becomes unlikable at a certain point. But he has got a lot of inherent charm and relatability.
I'd say more of relatability than charm. I don't know if I'd call him charm. But
he makes bad decisions, but you understand where they're coming from. They're coming from a malicious place. They're coming from, he's been hurting for a long time, and he's finally just so upset that he's hurting back, and not really thinking that's sort of self-defeating.
Right. Even them driving to work, the opening scene, I mean, getting stuck in traffic, we've all been there as well.
And every morning, right?
Every morning. Coming in Monday, and
and how the little things become really big things. The fact that the woman in the cubicle next to him has a really high-pitched, cheery voice. It's not her fault. She's not a bad person, but it would drive me goddamn crazy, right? It's the little things, but there's 1,000 of them, and they're every day. The door shocks him every time he touches the door handle.
Right.
One of his 8 bosses tells him about a mistake he made a week ago. Every single day he comes in, right? Like,
I've still got the memo here.
Yeah, TPS reports, right? It's not always a TPS report for you, but it will be something, and it will slowly chip away at you. This completely unimportant, seemingly pointless thing just wears at your soul.
Of course,
days after days after days. And you can't not cheer for him, even though he's breaking the law. And even though the script does somersaults to not absolve him, but remove him from any ability of being punished. He doesn't get to keep the money, but he doesn't get punished for it.
No.
And the real goal was, you hate your job, get another one. It might suck, but if you hate your life that much every day, get a different job, you know?
And he did.
And he did. And that was the big win of the movie. You know, he doesn't run the place now. He didn't find a way to be happy at the work. He changed his life. So, big fan of Office Space. I think that the cast is uniformly really strong. It's one of my favorite things I've seen Jennifer Aniston in. I really like her character in this movie. I find her charming. The whole thing with her working at one of these spazzy restaurants where she has to have pizzazz or whatever that was on her body, and that's the thing that finally makes her quit the job. You know, it's not the shitty customers, it's the fact that
she doesn't have 37 pizzazz.
Her boss has these weirdly strict, random, arbitrary rules that make no sense. It's just random authority for the sake of authority, and that's the thing that says, you know what, I need to get a different, better job.
Right.
And there's going to be elements of your job that you're not going to like, but you're going to,
if
you're miserable,
if
you're going to be miserable, make a change. That's the moral of the story, and I think it's a very good one.
Mm-hmm.
Office Space isn't going anywhere. I think it's going to age like wine.
Mm-hmm. I would say, yeah, possibly, yeah.
Is there anything else you want to say about Office Space?
I think we're okay. I mean, obviously you love it more than I do. I don't think I loved it as much.
Right.
I love the plight of
Stephen Root, who played
Stephen
Milton.
Root.
The whole thing actually comes from a series of short cartoons called Milton.
Yeah.
And that's sort of the character who's been, again, so dehumanized by the place that at some point they don't even notice him. They make a plot point in the movie that he'd actually been laid off, but nobody pointed it out to him, and due to an error in clerical error or whatever, he was continuing to get paid. So nobody really knew like who or what he was or what he was doing. He was just this prop in the office, basically. And yeah, he's got that sort of I'm gonna burn down the building voice. And Stephen Root's always been an actor that I really liked. I really believe that dude can do any part.
He can. But I mean, he's a guy that also he eventually just calmly snapped.
Yeah.
And he did do it. I mean, he did burn down the place, but I mean, he just eventually lost it. Calmly lost it, but he...
That's the thing. It's the slow erosion of your humanity. Milton could be kind of a lovable character, but I mean, he's constantly talking about threatening people. Like, if you listen to what he's saying while he's mumbling, that man is broken.
Oh, very.
And
very
it was the Office Space that did it.
Never has the screen been so big.
You ever been in a cockpit before?
No, sir, I've never been up in a plane before.
Peter Graves.
You ever seen a grown man naked?
Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
My name is Roger Murdoch. I'm an airline pilot.
Leslie Nielsen.
This woman has to be gotten to a hospital.
A hospital? What is it?
It's a big building with patients, but that's not important right now.
Lloyd Bridges.
Johnny, what can you make out of this?
This? Well, I could make a hat, or a brooch, or pterodactyl.
Robert Stack.
All right, Steve, let's face a few facts.
And we hope you enjoy the rest of your flight.
Julie Haggerty.
By the way, is there anyone on board who knows how to fly a plane?
Can you fly this plane and land it?
Robert Hayes.
Surely you can't be serious. I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
I gotta get out of here. I gotta get out of here. Down, get a hold of yourself.
All right, so the Zucker brothers and Jim Abrams, they've got a whole series of films behind them. One of my personal favorites from my youth is Top Secret.
Top Secret, yeah.
With Val Kilmer. Always loved that movie. It was a legit pleasure at the time, maybe a guilty pleasure these days, but I still have a soft spot for it. It's interesting when you talk about Airplane, ! In that this is one of these movies that's basically a lampoon of other Hollywood movies. The big airport catastrophe movies of the 70s.
All these Towering Inferno. I think it was based on 0 Hour, actually.
They actually got the license from an actual movie. Maybe you're right, 0 Hour, because they use a line from that movie because they thought it was just so hilarious. We need to find somebody who can fly this plane and who did not eat the fish. That's a real line from a legit movie, right? That they transplanted into this one. It's less biting as far as, like the teeth to the movie. It's a fairly soft subject, so the humor is fairly soft. But it goes to the Family Guy school of like, let's throw as many jokes as we can at you in a shorter period of time. Not all of them will be great, but enough of them will hit that you'll walk away happy.
Well, I think every scene has... I mean, this is one of these movies where every single scene has
Look in the background, read all of the signs. Like, people spent time to wedge in as many jokes as they could into the movie. And in a way, that's the real joy of it. The other thing that I find interesting, and it's another Family Guy comparison, is that they make a lot of direct references, not just to disaster movies, but to like famous films. Here to Eternity, Saturday Night Fever. And at the time I was watching this movie in 1980, that meant nothing to me.
Right.
It's sort of like the younger generation who watch Family Guy when they do a cutaway to some 80s cartoon or some reference to some commercial that aired in the 90s, right?
Yeah.
Most of them think, wow, what weird random humor that is, right?
Right.
The thing that I think gives Airplane its quality is that it didn't matter if I didn't understand those references. The scenes were still funny.
Right.
They were rolling around in the surf, a big wave hit them, and they were covered in goo and seaweed.
Right.
Hardy, har, har, har.
Hardy, har, har. I didn't know it was Lancaster.
Who cares that it was From Here to Eternity? The Saturday Night Fever dance scene. It's just an over-the-top dance scene. I didn't have to know that they were making fun of John Travolta. It's just, it's funny as it is. And every time I watch the movie, I find like a different aspect hits me. For whatever reason, when I was watching it for the podcast, it was the wordplay that was really getting to me. Like, we need you in the cockpit. The cockpit, what is it? It's a small room at the front of the plane, but that's not important right now.
Yeah. What's a hospital?
It's a big building with patients, but that's not important right now. For some reason, that shit was killing me this time when I was watching the movie. And that's kind of the joy of it. The story, if we can call it that, Ted Stryker is trying to win back his lady love. She's a stewardess on the plane. He gets on board, but he's got this tragic backstory where he'd led an ill-fated mission during the war, and he could never fly again, and he's been so fucked up by it that his career is over, and now his relationship is over. So he's got to win back the girl, played memorably by Julie Haggerty. I had a bit of a crush on her when I was a kid from this movie for some reason. I just thought she's this weird combination. She's got this sort of sweet, almost motherly voice, but she's also got a real sexy quality to her as well at times.
I can see it, yeah.
She can kind of turn it on when she wants to. And I was 6 when I watched this movie. I probably didn't even understand why I was so fascinated by her. I think that the later you get into the Zucker brothers' career, the less good their films tend to be. By the time you get to the Jane Austen's Mafia and that terrible American Carol, there's just they kind of run out of steam. But at this point, the 80s and early 90s, that era when they were doing the Naked Guns, the Top Secrets, the Airplanes, I think that they were doing some really good comedy. And I like that it's almost universal comedy. I think that almost anybody of any taste will find something to laugh at in this movie. The only gray area...
It's not offensive. It's not going to...
Well, I was about to say, the only gray area is because of the time it was made. Some people might choose to be offended by certain things. I don't think there's anything malicious about the jive talk joke, you know, or the people lining up to beat a hysterical woman. You know, I think that's funny. But I can understand somebody on the wrong day deciding to get, you know, put their nose up at it. But again, if you want to fight this movie, you'll win, right? It's Airplane. It's not smart. It's stupid. It wears its stupid on its sleeve, you know. Lloyd Bridges is the air traffic controller. Picked the wrong day to stop sniffing glue.
Yeah.
Robert Hayes. Robert Hayes plays Stryker. Sorry, Robert Stack.
Robert Stack.
A lot of people of our generation knew him as the host of Unsolved Mystery, but he's like this classic actor. Yeah. And he's sort of also doing the same thing that Leslie Nielsen does and delivering all of his lines absolutely stonely straight, no matter how ridiculous they are.
Well, all those older actors, well, except not so much Lloyd Bridges, because, I mean, he's hanging upside down after he's snorted a bunch of glue, but Leslie Nielsen, Robert Stack, and Peter Graves, who's the pilot, I mean, they just play it completely, all these old television actors, they just play it completely straight, and that's what makes it funny.
Yeah, that whole bit with Peter Graves hitting on that little kid was kind of dark.
Well, that's a bit dark, yeah.
Undeniably, like, funny in an uncomfortable way, but, like...
You ever seen Gladiator movies? Yeah.
Have you ever seen a grown man naked?
Yeah.
That's not cool, but it did make me laugh.
Yeah, it's...
There's darkness to humor. I remember when I was a little kid, I thought my dad was going to have an asthma attack. There's a scene where one of the stewardesses is playing the guitar to entertain the sick little girl, and when she swings the guitar, she knocks the IV out of the kid's arm.
Yeah.
And as everybody's having this lovely sing-along, this little kid is slowly dying in the background. Hilarious.
It is hilarious, yeah.
It is. It's absolutely hilarious. Do not fight this movie, and you're going to have a lot of fun with it.
Right.
Leslie Nielsen. This was the movie that turned Leslie Nielsen from character actor, serious actor, to Leslie Nielsen, comedic genius.
Right, exactly.
It's funny in that I think it's true what we're saying is he's not doing a lot different than anybody else was in that. But I think it was because people had always taken Leslie Nielsen relatively seriously in the past that it was such a warm, welcome surprise.
Right.
I'm dead serious, and don't call me Shirley.
And don't call me
This was the day before gag reels, but I bet you if they had a gag reel for Airplane, it would be longer than the movie itself. Keeping a straight face could not have always been easy.
Oh, no. Have you ever seen he did a TV show it was based on Naked Gun movies. Were based
Police
on
Squad.
Police Squad, yeah. Those were funny. I mean, it was only like a summer filler, I think, but there were only 6 episodes, but those were hilarious.
Yeah, underwatched but appreciated now more than at the time. And at least they gave us the Naked Gun movies, or at least the first 2 Naked Gun movies. I wasn't as big on the third Naked Gun movie, but to each their own. There's some blue humor to it, like we've talked about. I remember not understanding the humor about the automatic pilot when I was a kid.
Oh, okay,
it was like this inflatable pilot that shoots up, and like this balloon was driving the plane, and it started to deflate, and she had to pump air back into him through a little valve right below his belt. That was completely lost on me as a kid. And then after, when he's filled up again, Julie Haggerty is like having this slow cigarette smoke after. It's so absurd. Otto, the co-pilot, actually is credited as himself in the credits.
Yes.
Fun fact.
Yeah. And one of the other people that we haven't talked about was one of the grounds control people was I can't remember his name. The very over-the-top flamboyant fellow.
Johnny or
John
Steven Stucker. Oh, sorry, I've got this list in front of me. But yeah, that sort of flamboyantly gay character who always had the one-liners that sing in the background.
Yeah, oh yeah. I mean, that's the thing. He just pops up, says one line, and he's gone for like 5 or 6 minutes. And he comes
believe
back.
that's Steven Stucker here. He doesn't have a picture next to his reference, so let's assume that's right.
That's his name, but what's the character?
No, that's the actor, the Johnny Henshaw Jacobs.
Johnny, yeah.
Yeah. So that's him. Also, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Roger Murdoch, and then there's of course Captain Over and Captain Under, and all of this delicious wordplay.
Right.
I also get a kick out of how everybody hates Stryker's backstory. He goes through a series of people he sits next to where he tells them this tragic backstory, and all of them end up taking their own lives because they just can't stand. And it's also, I think, a statement to how clumsily exposition is handled in movies. We all know that this scene needs to happen, so now we sit through it, right? So it's a subtle comment on it. I mean, I wouldn't overly accuse this movie of being the sharpest of satires, but I mean, they're making fun of Hollywood, so they're kind of making fun of something that is stupid.
No, they're making fun of all these films that they made and took so seriously, and they tried to make money from.
Of all these movies that we talk about, clearly I think this is the softest target that has been taken.
Oh, yeah.
And Hollywood's, softening of real tragic situations for entertainment, yes, I get it. But thank you for existing, Airplane. Also, special mention to Airplane 2, the sequel. It's not a lot difference to this, but they just sort of set it in space. And we have Bill Shatner as the guy calling the shots from the ground.
Right.
And I, at least when I was a kid, maybe I'd say differently if I rewatched it today. As a kid, I liked it at least as much or more than this.
Well, if you saw Star Trek reruns or something,
I think this movie's review proof. Like I said earlier, I think if anybody will find something to laugh at it, you might not think it's as hilarious as we do. Again, it's aged maybe not as gracefully as we would like, but it's harmless fun.
Oh, I think people would laugh at anything that they see in this film. I mean, there's something for everything. There's something funny in every scene. Yeah. I find, whether it's the girl being suffocating to death, lady being slapped, there's a lot. There's a lot. Peter Gray's creepy pilot pedophile.
The point is that it's a fun, funny movie, and if you haven't seen it, you probably should.
Right. Oh, of course, yeah. Of course you should see it.
Hello, handsome. Is that a 10-gallon hat?
So just sign this right here.
Oh, okay, give us a hand here.
All right, sir.
Work.
Okay, folks, let's wind it out!
The heroic sheriff rallies his citizens in the wildest finish the West has ever seen, or the movies have ever shown.
Ow! Oh, ow! Have you ever seen such cruelty?
Mel Brooks?
I think so. Yeah.
Obscure filmmaker Mel Brooks. He's an amazing talent. I mean, that goes without saying. I mean, from the movies that he's produced, which are really interesting, like The Elephant Man.
Yeah, he produced The Elephant Man. Yeah.
Very strange. The Fly, the Jeff Goldblum Fly. He produced.
He produced that?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Very strange, interesting, diverse production career beyond his films, which are specifically comedic. I think the one thing that Mel Brooks made happen with the Zucker brothers is that I think the later into his career, the less funny the movies start to get to me in the little ways, like
with Mel Brooks,
as well. Yes. That's just how I feel. Like Dracula Dead and Loving It didn't do that much for me. Life Stinks didn't do that much for me.
Life Stinks so. Robin Hood wasn't.
Robin Hood has its moments, but I mean, for a Mel Brooks joint, right? But I think that it is Young Frankenstein, the producers, and this movie, Blazing Saddles, that makes Mel Brooks Mel motherfucking Brooks. Right. It's also interesting because this was a fairly tough, subversive movie for the day it came out. But it's funny how it seems both tougher and softer today. Some stuff in this movie that was controversial at the time, nothing today. Some of the stuff that was less controversial at the time is shocking today. I didn't realize how uncomfortable I was made by the word nigger. The N word is thrown around a lot in this movie, and it really did. There's this scene where the sheriff, Cleavon Little, stops this nice lady walking down the street, tips his hat, and says, "Well, good day, lady." And she responds, "Fuck you, nigger," to his face. And it's like, holy shit. But I love how they did not pussyfoot around the racism.
Well, and then even after that, when she apologizes to him later, she says, "Well, here's an apple pie." I said, "Oh, sorry about the F you." I can't say it, but sorry about the F word. You know, and then
I know you'll be nice enough to not tell anybody that I spoke to you in this way. Basically,
of course, man.
Yeah, nobody will know that you were nice to the black sheriff. Yeah, edgy, subversive throughout. Basically, a greedy business corporate dude, Harvey Korman, wants to take possession of this town because it's going to become an important way station along the train tracks, and
they want to put a railway through.
They want to put a railway through there, and he's going to make a ton of money. You got to move these people. So he's got a bunch of bandits that are going to scare the town away, and he's going to put this incompetent black man in charge, so they'll have no way to protect themselves. But of course, Mr. Little turns out to be smarter than any 10 of the people around him, and is 10 steps ahead of everybody at all times. But the thing, like, at the time people were shocked was like the farting scene. There's a scene with a bunch of cowboys farting, and we'd never heard oh my god, how dare they? And that just seems like childish and whatever. It's like the easiest joke in the movie right? To me, it's the strange politics and the interesting, edgy filmmaking. There's a lot of fourth wall breaks. The third act of this movie is like narratively disastrous, but comedically just amazing.
Oh yeah.
Like it's a crazy, crazy movie, and it is still funny today. And for a movie made in 1974 to still have this much teeth and this much laughs,
very much.
Bravo across the board.
And again, they're still making fun of the Hollywood themselves.
Yeah.
Especially towards the end.
If you're going to be triggered by racism or white guilt, well, that's too bad, because that's just too bad. This is a movie that has Richard Pryor as one of the credited screenplay writers, and I think that's a lot.
He was supposed to play
Little, the role that Cleavon Little played. I think that's where some of the sharper edge might have come from. I mean, obviously don't know who wrote what joke, but Pryor was a sharp guy, and he had no problem, making people a little bit uncomfortable with his humor. Right. And there's a line given by Gene Wilder about halfway through the movie, and it's not really in defense of everyone else's behavior, but it's just something he's trying to comfort Bart, who's been so put upon by these people. Like, you're dealing with this, the rough building blocks salt of America. Morons.
And then click on that on that.
I love the blunt, undeniable honesty of that line.
Yeah.
It's funny, but it's fucking true.
Mm-hmm.
Especially at the time that they were talking about the average level of intelligence or empathy or anything that was going on with it. It was basically day-to-day survival. Everybody was as much an enemy as a friend, and if there was a lower class to be put upon, then you could look down on, bully for you.
Mm-hmm.
This is an environment where being a proud racist had no social ramifications at all. Mm-hmm. This is an environment, where public hangings were entertainment. This is an environment where all sorts of what we would call social ills were embraced fully. Right. And it's always painted in this cookie cutter, aw shucks. Wasn't it better back then? No, it was not. No, no, it was not.
Kind of speaks to what's going on today. And
it's still completely relevant today. It's completely relevant today. It starts off with a chain gang, or not? No, they're not a chain gang. They're building this railroad, but the ground's starting to look a little soft, so they send a couple of the colored fellows ahead. Mm-hmm. And once they get stuck in the quicksand, the big discussion becomes how are we going to get that equipment out of the pit. No concession or talk about saving the men at all.
No.
Hilarious, right?
Yeah.
And again, we are always asked to be on the side of the movie's punching up, right? Mm-hmm. It's always making fun of the authorities, always making fun of the people in position of power.
Yeah. And Harvey Korman plays a position of power so wonderfully. Even at the end, even towards the end there, he insisted he was going to grab an Oscar.
No, he's asking for it.
Yeah.
He keeps on talking about it actively in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
And again, the same thing with the character that the Mel Brooks plays himself.
Mm-hmm.
He's somehow in this position of power, but he's an idiot. He is completely incompetent.
He's a figurehead. He's not calling any of the shots.
He was born to the right family at the right time and somehow inherited the right position. But he's not top dog because he's the smartest, or
Mm-hmm.
It's completely circumstance.
Yes,
right.
Yes.
Just like the black characters aren't downtrodden and bad people. It's just that's the position they've been asked and forced to play by society.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that Mel Brooks was calling this all out in the air. Remember in 1974, the big popcorn fair to go to, a lot of times the westerns were starting to die out, but people were still paying to see a Clint Eastwood spaghetti western or John Wayne,
Mm-hmm.
like. These were plumb entertainment, straight entertainment that never asked you to ask any hard questions about the left and right. And this movie is entertaining, and it kind of asks you to ask hard questions about the left and right, because nothing that they're talking about isn't true. I also wanted to talk about Madeline Kahn, who I think is a goddess.
Yeah.
I love Madeline Kahn,
mm-hmm.
and I love the character she plays in this movie. Again, she is a tool of the evil people in the movie, and she's this prostitute, and she has this hilarious song and dance number. It's like, no matter what your job is, even if you love it, sooner or later you get sick of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And basically the whole thesis of her song is like, guys, I love you, I love my job, but I cannot fuck anybody right now. I don't have it in me. I am utterly shagged out. And it's a completely pleasing song and dance number in a saloon, and it's supposedly this seductive, barroom dance, but really what she's saying is, I need a night off.
Yeah.
Sorry, I feel like I've been rolling over you.
No, you haven't been rolling over me at all. Gene Wilder was very funny too. He's also, for an outlaw in that, he was actually in Cleveland Little and Jim, as he calls himself. They were incredibly smart, witty characters. You wouldn't expect that from an outlaw gunslinger, or what was to be expected, the token black person that they got just to basically
I like the friendship that blooms between the two of them, because they're both low status. He's a washed up drunk that sleeps most of his nights in the jail cell.
Mm-hmm.
So no one gives a shit about him.
No.
And the backstory they give him, it has a little bit of pathos, and it is much pathos as a movie as Blazing Saddles will allow, right?
Oh, of course, yeah.
He used to be this badass gunslinger, and then he realized that people looked up to him, and he was just creating more murderers by his very existence.
Mm-hmm. And then he laid back because he got shot in the ass by a 6-year-old kid.
That's right. But I like that sort of this warm friendship that you believe. It doesn't seem like he's the one good white guy, or that they happened to be in a place where they had enough time enclosed together that they connected.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it might not have happened under different circumstances, but it's really good that it did.
I just like the line. Like, so what is your pleasure? What can I help you with? I like chess. Screwing. Well, let's play chess.
But let's play chess. Yes. Zinger line.
Yeah.
I love the ending of this movie. Like, it's supposedly going to be this big climactic thing where they have a shootout to fend off the bandits, and we're going to eventually see Harvey Korman arrested, or, you know, the standard, you know, happy ending.
Mm-hmm.
It is completely abandoned.
Oh, yeah.
It is completely, deliciously abandoned. And all of a sudden, the set breaks into, like, the other studio where they're filming a musical next there, and then into the next set, and then into the next set, and
into the commons area.
And then the camera just starts to pan out, and starts to pan out, and you start to think, are they going to roll credits? And then they roll credits, and you're just like, wow, there's no summation to it. There's no, like, this is the point that we were trying to make. There's no happy ending. Evil isn't punished. Good doesn't necessarily triumph. The movie just kind of...
Well, I mean, they went to the movies to watch themselves in the movie.
Yeah, they went and watched to see how it turned out. Yeah.
No.
It kind of reminds me, actually, of Monty Python and the Holy Grail. At the end, if they did that because they ran out of money in that movie, they were going to do this big sweeping action sequence, but instead the police show up and arrest everybody, and the movie abruptly ends. I like that. I also like seeing other interesting faces. David Huddleston, who plays one of the higher level people in the township.
Oh yeah.
Later died fairly recently, but he played the Big Lebowski in the Big Lebowski, and it was kind of nice seeing him in a younger role there. The character, I'm trying to find the name of the actor here. They call him Mongo.
Oh, Alex Karras, yeah.
Alex
He used to play football.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing I was sort of talking about with the Brick character in Anchorman, where it's like, this is uncomfortable, you know, they call him a mongoloid. This is, but like, again, in this day and age, people who are born with some sort of disability are not going to be treated with any measure of respect or empathy, right? So, could I choose to be offended by Mongo? I guess. Am I offended by Mongo? No. I think of him more as like the cartoon caveman character from a Bugs Bunny cartoon, and a function of the plot, than as a serious sort of portrayal of any kind of, you know.
If anything, I feel bad for the horse that he knocks out.
Yeah, exactly. And just the comedy of it, and how he's a physical threat. So in the end of the day, Blazing Saddles is a classic. I mean, like, I don't know what I can say about the movie to convince people, if you haven't seen it, to see it. Like, it's important for the subject matter that it tackles. It's significant that, it was a huge hit. It didn't necessarily stir up too much of a negative controversy. Like,
not for that time.
Not for that time.
Like they say with anything, like All in the Family or that, you couldn't be made today. That's what people say.
Yeah. But there are movies that I do agree wouldn't be made today, right? Heathers wouldn't be made today. Or even Blazing Saddles in this form would not exist today. I think then there'll be ways that they would do it that would be harsher, and there would be ways they would do it to be softer. But I love the frankness with which they handle the racism in this. And I get the feeling that in this climate there would be a lot more hand-holding going on. The fact that it still has teeth, like 40 years later, big points.
Yeah.
Dr. Strangelove. Mr. President, the technology required is easily within the means of even the smallest nuclear power. It requires only the will to do so.
Gentlemen, you can't fight in here. This is the war room.
Colonel Replazar, as an officer in Her Majesty's Air Force, it is my clear duty to issue the recall code and bring back the wing. You'll excuse me, sir.
He says that one of the planes hasn't turned back. He says, according to information forwarded by our air staff, it's headed for the missile complex at Laputa.
So we've come all the way back to 1964.
Yes.
And Dr. Strangelove, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb. There's lots to love about this movie, but I think that upon this viewing, the thing that I really respected about it is more so than any of the other movies that we talked about, this movie never asks for a laugh.
But it gets it.
It gets laughs left and right, but it's never like, come on, you guys.
No.
It never does the, obvious broad slapstick gimme comedy of Airplane.
No.
Or the in-your-face, isn't this uncomfortable comedy of Borat.
No.
It just lays out, in quote, facts in front of you, these story elements, and has you watch them. All of the characters, as far as their performances, even the really dramatically strange ones like Dr. Strangelove himself, are playing their characters authentically.
Oh, of course,
it's not funny because the characters are trying to be funny. It's funny because the characters are inherently flawed and funny. And it actually plays out shockingly plain-faced. Like, if you weren't paying close enough attention, if it was just on in the background of a bar, you might think you were watching a legit Cold War movie. Right? The genius of it is how the cards are played so close to the chest, and the absolutely preposterous high stakes that get set up by this scenario. Like, this is one guy who's gone crazy,
right?
Who's convinced that the communists are messing with our essential juices.
Bodily fluids, yeah.
He, through his position of power, initiates a scenario where nuclear Armageddon is almost inevitable, because the system in place is such that that's the only result.
Well, it's either going to be us or them.
Yeah. So then it becomes the preemptive strike. Well, we inadvertently preemptively struck them. So if they saw that and they're striking, like, maybe we should just go whole hog, and instead of having one bomb drop, just level the fucking place.
Yeah,
right?
They did the same similar movie, except it was a serious movie. Same year, 1964, Failsafe.
Right.
With Henry Fonda. The same
thing.
Premise.
And I still think, I mean, it's not a thriller, I would never call it that, but I think that the stakes in the movie actually kind of work to a degree. Peter Sellers, who memorably plays 3 different roles in the movie, the guy who's trying to reason with this maverick, insane military gentleman, he's in such an impossible situation. And he's keeping this sort of polite British demeanor. Yes, I see what you're saying there. But don't you think that maybe not ending the world, it's real to his character.
Yeah, it is. And he doesn't even seem like he's proper military. He almost seems like he's an office clerk worker who happens to fall into the military. He doesn't really have any training, especially when he's supposed to be holding the shells or the gun that he's feeding.
Yeah, he's uncomfortable with it, you can tell. But then you have the other side of the scenario here, the picture, which is represented by the George C. Scott character. Full disclosure, I love George C. Scott. I'm a huge George C. Scott fan. And it's hard for me not to think about Patton, actually, a little bit, watching back on this. There's a scene in Patton where George C. Scott has this moment of self-recognition where he's seeing this theater of war coming together and the battle about to take place, and he says to himself, God help me, I love this. Where he realizes that, like, people are going to die. He's put the pieces on the board for this scenario to take place, and instead of feeling anxiety about it, he's excited about it. The character he plays in this movie is that to almost worst degree, but he has no self-awareness of it at all. Right? He is not able to self-examine. He is rah-rah America. If America does it, it's right. And if America wins, it's right. And anything to the left or right of that is not worth thinking about.
Right. Apparently they shot 2 different because Kubrick is notorious for 110 takes kind of thing, and they shot 2 different types of version for George C. Scott. Where he did it very straight, and then he did it over the top. But he did it as a very harsh military man, and they of course went the comedic way, and apparently he didn't like that. Yeah. I don't know if you'd ever heard that.
Well, I didn't know that they shot it 2 different ways. I do know that Kubrick's got a ridiculous reputation for tons and tons and tons of takes. He has to get it just so. That said, it still feels kind of restrained by Kubrick measures. It doesn't have as many of the long panning takes. It doesn't take its time as much. It's a 96-minute movie. It's presented, frankly. It feels almost like a docudrama, but it's this hilarious satire.
Right, yeah.
I like that George C. Scott played it that big. I totally get how you could Leslie Nielsen it too and just go completely straight. But everybody was doing that to a certain degree. And it was just so refreshing to see George C. Scott, let the dogs out a little bit with his performance. He is ridiculous and over the top, but he doesn't know that he's ridiculous and over the top. So his character remains credible no matter what insane advice comes out of his mouth. Mm-hmm. He's supposed to be whispering wisdom into the president's ear about, global war. Yeah. And he is like horny to drop bombs. He just really wants to do it.
30, 40 million people tops.
Yeah, whatever. Minimal. Even when it comes down to bomb shelters and repopulating the world, he's not really talking about it in any kind of real stakes way.
No.
This is the best way to maintain America at this point.
Mm-hmm. Not the world, no.
No, America. America,
yeah.
Nice to see Darth Vader himself, James Earl Jones, very young in his career, but got to be a good get to be on that set.
Yeah, right? I think that was his first film.
Yeah, and again, he wasn't in any way a draw or particular standout at the time the movie came out, but a welcome present. I actually really like the entire crew of the bomber. Again, realistically portrayed. The real tragedy is when their communication equipment gets shut down, because they are just a bunch of guys doing exactly what they're supposed to do throughout this. None of the things that they do are necessarily according to the books wrong.
Which
is what makes it terrifying.
They're following protocol.
They're following the protocol, and their training says you do not question it. You never question it. No. You're specifically the guy in that seat because we know you will not question it.
Right.
And that's
whether the general's gone.
That's the meticulous planning that will doom the world, right?
Right.
If some guy calls you and says, press that button, you press that button. You don't ask him when, you don't ask him why.
It's like the Secret Service. You jump in front of the president.
Yeah.
You don't think.
It's heroic in a certain degree, but it's also horrifying to think that because it's a human institution, it is full of human flaws. Mistakes will be made. Most places, if a mistake's made in the office, an order doesn't get filled, or a customer has to wait longer than they would like to. In these stakes, a bomb gets dropped on a city.
And people die.
And war starts. So, again, how it handles the comedy is really interesting. Like I said, I think it was Rob Reiner talking about The Princess Bride. The tone of The Princess Bride was they were tipping their hands, but not quite enough for you to see it. Whereas this one's sort of the opposite. Like, they're almost trying to hide the fact in presentation that this is a comedy. And that's what kind of brings the comedy to life while maintaining the stakes.
And they had just gone through kind of a Cold War. They almost went to World War III with Khrushchev and Kennedy, too, back in the day. The whole Bay of Pigs. And this was just a couple of years later. So...
it was a reflection of the paranoia of the time. And I think that at the time it came out, that actually might have hurt the yayas of the movie. It would be harder to laugh at then than it maybe is now.
It would be horrifying because you would have lived through it. I mean, kids in the 50s had to...
Bomb drills in school.
Bomb drills, yeah.
Yeah, hide under your desk, and that will stop you from dying when the temperature is raised by several thousand degrees.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Wearing a helmet when you skydive. The
helmet's not going to do anything. Absolutely. Your seat is a flotation device, so survive the explosion and the fall. Maybe you'll have something to hold on to. Yeah. No, it's the illusion of safety. And I think what Dr. Strangelove is positing is that the military and government as an apparatus, as we understand it, is your flotation device as a seat. It is the illusion of safety.
Right.
And that is a frankly terrifying thing. Yeah. So terrifying that I'm grateful to laugh, because it becomes laugh or cry at a certain point, right? And at that point, I will choose to laugh.
Well, even with wordplay in there, I mean, you were talking about wordplay before with like Airplane and other films. I mean, some of the wordplay in there, like, there's no fighting in here, gentlemen. This is the war room.
You can't fight in here. It's the war room.
When they start storming that general's office and that, and they, his people are, shooting the military that's coming, the incoming military that's coming, because they think it's actually the Russians coming in, and it's not. It's their own people. And I see these billboards all over the place. Peace is our profession.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, there's war.
They're killing themselves.
They're killing themselves. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then that whole bit with that military guy that actually gets in there and he's talking to Mandrake, polite little Mandrake, and he said, I have to make a phone call. They're trying to find this dime desperately. They have to make this phone call to the White House, to the president. Go shoot that soda machine.
I can't do that.
Yeah, because I'm not gonna answer the Coca-Cola company.
Yeah. I can't just destroy things because you asked me to.
Yeah. I can kill people, but heaven forbid, I don't want to answer to the Coca-Cola company.
I also respect the movie's commitment to character, as in people are who they are at the end of the day, and there's nothing that you can do to change that.
Right.
I think that's best illustrated by Dr. Strangelove himself. It's an infamous but factual thing that a lot of high-ranking Nazi scientists were basically selected to become basically high-ranking members of the American infrastructure, help them make bombs for the other side. It's either that or a cell, right? So it's a cartoon character, but it's based on a real idea. And the fact that Strangelove he can't resist calling the president Mein Führer, and his arm almost like independently of him does a Nazi salute.
Well,
it's hilarious, but it's also kind of a comment, is that a person is who it is. He might be a genius scientist, but he's also a fucking Nazi. And you probably don't want to be associating yourself with Nazis.
And you don't want him in there, no.
George C. Scott, again, at the end of the day, whether he could admit it to himself, he wants war. It's what he was built for. So any scenario that will facilitate that is what he's going to push forward. And it's not that he would think of himself as a villain or as an evil person. That's fundamentally who he is. His driving force is, I'm here to fight. Give me someone to fight.
Right. Yep. That's exactly what it is. And I think the big thing that we're missing, really, that we're not talking about, are the 3 performances of Peter Sellers.
Yeah.
Which is the second time he's done that in the film. And, he plays the president so straight and...
Almost not a comedic role, the president.
No. And not at all.
It's more him dealing with the lunacy of the people around him and his reaction to that, and him trying to deal with the drunk Russian on the other
Well, that's
end
the
of
funny...
phone.
That's where the funny part is. When he's dealing with, Dmitri.
We've kind of had a little oopsie.
He went a little funny in the head.
Just like sugarcoating it, doesn't say it at all. We may have inadvertently triggered war, so
I'm just as sorry as you, Dimitri. Don't say you're more sorry than me. I'm just as sorry as you.
Don't think that I'm happy about this. Yeah. I'm not, Again, it's almost becomes a polite comedy of manners at that point. Right? These are 2 people that are, throwing nuclear weapons at each other, but they're talking to each other like, well,
Oopsie.
We got to make a deal here. The Jerry Lundegaard from Fargo. Well, geez, Oh, heck yeah. No, but you're the president of the United States. This is a pretty big deal. You got to break through that drunk and make him understand they need to shoot down that plane.
Yeah.
Again, by doing everything right in the plane and by being able to evade being shot down and being perfect soldiers, they undo the world.
Yeah.
Riding down on a nuclear missile as a way to go out.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be fun. I guess it would be terrifying. I don't think you would feel anything, but...
I don't think you would, but he was an old rodeo boy.
I think a case could be made if you were making a list of top 10 most memorable cinematic deaths, period. That might have to be mentioned.
That always seems to pop up in those lists that they, AFI was having those lists, and the swinging the cowboy hat, and he's falling back on the bomb.
It's an impressive image and idea anyway. It's a classic movie. Again, reviewer proof. There's a handful of people who would make the argument that it's an overrated comedy. I think that's because of the straightness with which the comedy is handled. I think that, if someone didn't know their history and wasn't paying close enough attention, they might have thought it was a drama with a few funny lines.
Right, yeah.
I don't think that. I think that it's absolutely biting satire, and I'm a huge fan.
Right. I'm a very huge fan of this film as well. And I love Sellers' performances in it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've always respected him as a talent. We talk about movies that don't age well. Like, as a kid, I loved The Party.
Oh, that was hilarious,
right?
Yeah.
Right? There's a movie that would not be made today.
No.
Right? Add that to the list.
Mm-hmm.
I really liked it, though.
No, it was a great movie. Great movie, but no.
Malcolm, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Malcolm's been suffering through some cramping in his leg, the poor man, while we've been doing this.
Yeah, I had a pulled hamstring or something, or a tightened hamstring.
You fought through it. We made it. We're at the ranks. Mm-hmm. Thank you so much for coming back to Rank and Review. It's been almost exactly a year since you've been on.
That's right. We'll have to do this more often.
I agree.
Mm-hmm.
I am fascinated to hear, what was your least favorite of a strong bunch of movies, really? What was your least favorite of this group of 6?
I would have to go with probably Borat. I would have to go with Borat. Would be number 6 on that, just for the fact that I mean all 6. I liked all of the films. I did like all the films, but Borat just to me, maybe it was something that you said before. I mean, it didn't change my mind. I already had my rank in my head, but I mean, I think with Borat, it just seemed like maybe too much of the biting of. I like the kind of camera style action of it, but I'm not sure how to word this.
There's a percentage of uncomfortable.
Maybe a little bit, yeah. Yeah, I guess maybe that would be it. Maybe it was a bit uncomfortable, or maybe it was maybe the seeing of the Kazakhstan and how stereotypical that would be, a very poorish country. Yeah. I don't know. Maybe that's where it would fall. I mean, I like Sacha Baron Cohen, obviously, but maybe that's why it would fall in there.
Right.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Mm-hmm.
Number 5?
I would go with Office Space. Just strictly for that. I mean, I'm not a big fan of Ron Livingston. I get what he was doing in there, and he was kind of the anchor of the film. It just happens to be number 5 in a good list of films.
It's tough competition.
It is a tough competition. Yeah. So, I mean, that would be my least. I get the whole Office, looking at your watch on a Monday morning, it's 10:30, and you think, okay, I've only got 37 and a half more hours left to go in this week. I get that, but I would say that would be my number 5.
Fair enough.
Number 4, Anchorman. And this is where the films kind of get really...
Tougher.
I mean, they get a lot better. And like I said, number 4 is it's in a tough group of films. But I would go Anchorman number 4. I mean, Will Ferrell did it really well as a straight news anchor in a very chauvinistic 1970s world. They all played the characters very well. Even Christine Applegate kind of came through in that women's movement that occurred in the 70s, and she was showing up stronger and stronger. Cameos, they're okay here and there, but I mean, all the performances, the 4 male leads and Christine Applegate were wonderful. Yeah. Number 3, I go with Airplane. Like I said before, there's a laugh every second. There is. There's every scene, not every second, every scene there's a laugh. And I appreciate the older television actors playing it straight. Robert Hayes sort of played it straight. He had sort of a farcical bit, like the whole drinking problem thing.
Right.
But this kind of set Leslie Nielsen. He played it straight better than anyone.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that would be my number. That'd be my number 3. Number 2, the film we just talked about, Dr. Strangelove, or How I Stopped Worrying and Learned to Love the Bomb. That's on any of these other lists that you have. That would be a number 1. But yeah, that makes number 2 for me. Just happenstance, that's all it is. And number 1 would be Blazing Saddles, just because it's Mel Brooks, so brilliant, so it is so biting, and it's so somewhat ahead of its time, and it's not. I think Mel Brooks is kind of pointing the finger at people that are racist, and people might have seen this and think, well, Mel Brooks, you're you're a really hateful person. That's not the case at all. It's not at all.
We're not laughing with the slave owners at all.
No, we're not. No, we're laughing. Yeah, no, we're not. We're not laughing at all is what I mean. But I mean, Blazing Saddles would be my number one. I mean, again, it's just a brilliant film.
That's a really good list. I think the difficulty of having a strong list as this is that like they don't fall into place easy. There are some lists where it just seems to make sense to me. All of these seem to be difficult. I think we'll have to confirm this. If not for Borat being at the bottom, we might have gone 0 for 6 here. But let's figure it out.
Okay.
So in 6th place, yes, I agree with you, Borat. I have mixed feelings about the approach, but I can't lie that I did have a great theatrical experience, laughing at a lot. Like to the point where like my sides hurt a little bit. Like I laughed a lot. And again, being in a room full of hundreds of other people laughing makes it very contagious and stuff like that.
You echo the laughter.
But afterwards I had to think about my laughter. And some people would say, is that a good thing? Like you laughed and then you thought maybe that's a good thing. But it was like, should I be laughing? Was that okay? And again, I'm kind of impressed that they managed to push my buttons. But I had to put something at the bottom, and I guess I had enough reservations that it made it to the bottom. Would I tell somebody to not watch Borat? No, I would not. I would say absolutely watch Borat. Some of it might rub you the wrong way, but you'll laugh.
Right.
So there it is. This is where you're going to get mad, though.
No.
All the way in 5th place, I'm putting Airplane.
Oh, okay.
Here's the thing. Out of all of the movies that we're talking about, I think it's the softest target as far as the satire. And it seems unkind to call it dumb, but the comedy is kind of obvious, overt. Like I say, wordplay, slapstick, man fall down, stereotypes, right? I love the movie. I like the fact it's in 5th place. Doesn't really sit super well with me, but like that's how I'm justifying it. Is just it's a goofier, lighter comedy. It doesn't quite have the intelligence behind it. But sometimes this is exactly the movie you want. Sometimes you don't want to be challenged. You don't want to be. You just want to laugh. And if you just want to laugh,
that's the movie.
That is the movie for you. So, in 4th place, and I know that there's a couple people who are listening to this show who are going to say, "You maniac!" I am putting Anchorman: The Legend of Ron Burgundy. Scott Lehman, I apologize because my friend Scott just yelled at the podcast.
Okay, yeah.
I love where the heart of the movie's at. I do think it's a fundamentally funny movie. I think, making fun of the social norms of the 70s is, a very ripe topic for satire.
Right.
Again, it's a little bit broader and arguably maybe less intelligence and less teeth than some of the other movies that we've talked about here. But hard to not like Anchorman.
Right.
So making it controversially all the way to 3rd place, we have Office Space. I think maybe I benefited from the amount of time I actually have spent in a cubicle. I think maybe the more time you've spent in that environment, the more you'll connect to this movie.
Sure.
But whether or not you've worked in a cubicle or lived in that environment, I think almost everybody has had a job that they hated and had to deal with this nauseating infrastructure of management who are just casually awful to you. And the fact that they're able to make me laugh at that and take comfort from it, I think is valuable
of course,
for me. So it made it surprisingly all the way to 3rd place. I think that's the biggest surprise for me for my list, because I like to make the list before I watch the movies, and then after watching them, put them in that order. And I imagined Anchorman outranking Office Space when I sat down to do this originally, and upon revisiting them, I really connected to that dark underbelly in Office Space.
Right.
1 and 2.
Yeah, that's hard.
So tough. I guess
I didn't find it tough though.
Yeah.
To make.
I put Blazing Saddles in 2nd place. But it's a narrow coin toss of a thing, And I guess it's just there are the few things that were edgy at the time that aren't anymore. That kind of just sort of sit there. Like I talked about the Cowboys farting scene. That was not particularly funny,
Yeah.
some of the more obvious cutaway jokes, the gallows humor of the guy hanging both the cowboy and his horse for some reason and stuff like that. There's an overt silliness that are kind of the obvious things that are more of its day. And when Blazing Saddles is at its best is when it's breaking the rules instead of repeating old ones, right? And like I say, that third act almost gave it first place. Like, I'm usually the guy who's really anal about story structure and stuff like that, but I love that the movie just abandons itself in the third act. I don't know why. I think that's so fucking funny, but I think that's hilarious. But again, boring film school. I have to give it to Kubrick for number one for Dr. Strangelove, just because of the scale of the darkness of the subject matter that they're dealing with.
Well, nuclear war,
yeah. The fact that they did successfully make me laugh. I don't know if I maybe took as much comfort from it, but I don't think they're asking you to. I think they're taking a pretty hard look at the powers that be and how real it is as a system. And it's asking some pretty big, pretty tough questions, but they're not rubbing your nose in it. They're still being very entertaining.
Yeah.
And that Peter Sellers triple performance, I mean,
well,
hard to beat. Hard to beat.
Right, and that could have happened back in the day too. That was, I mean, a pretty scary situation to be in. Yeah. It
wasn't far-fetched, and it isn't far-fetched.
Well, that's still, not today. No.
Not at all. Not at all. So in Laugh or Cry, like, again, I'm going to choose laughter. But especially the top two, Malcolm. Just Blazing Saddles and Dr. Strangelove. That's tough.
If we had done this on a Tuesday, it might be a different... Yeah.
Exactly. But so as much as we've largely disagreed on the rank, I don't think we really disagree that much.
No, not much.
I think the biggest difference probably obviously is Office Space.
Yeah.
And you would certainly say that I ranked Airplane too low, but again, I would recommend all 6 of these movies.
Yes, I would too. I would too.
Thank you so much, Malcolm.
Well, thank you, Larry. Thank you. Sorry
Take care of your leg.
No, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. It's just spasms. So.
And I hope your phone dries nicely in its bag of rice.
I hope so too. Yeah, my phone fell in the tub today, people. Anyway.
Take care, brother.
Bye-bye.
So you guys, this show's not always about, people getting their throats cut, tragedies, darkness, monstrosities. No. Sometimes we can talk about funny, lighter subjects. I hope you enjoyed Satire, and I hope you continue listening to Rank and Review. We're going to be talking about Martin Scorsese in the next episode, so we're still straying further yet off the path of the genre, but we'll get back to the horror, I promise. It'll happen. If you have feedback for me for this episode or any episode of Rank and Review, you can send it to ranknreview@gmail.com. That's ranknreview@gmail.com. The website is ranknreview.ca. And if you enjoy Rank and Review, I bet you'll like the Terror Table podcast. So do check out the Terror Table podcast. Thank you so much for listening to Rank and Review. You show impeccable taste in podcasts. Please do spread the word on the show and continue listening. Until next time, I'm your host and random Canadian Larry Parsons. Be well.